I'm Ryan Zarama from Commerce Guys. I'm one of the founders of the company, and now I'm actually the only owner of the company. Because in 2016, I bought the Commerce Guys business, which is all oriented around Drupal commerce, away from my partners. So if you're not familiar with our story, we started in '09. I may even have this in the slides, but whatever. We started in '09. It was me and two other guys, hence the name Commerce Guys, doing e-commerce on Drupal. We merged with the French team at AF83. When we did that, they brought like 15 people into the company and no revenue, so we raised venture capital on the promise of building products around Drupal commerce within the Drupal community. Never ended up doing that, so we raised 3 rounds of VC and instead built Platform.sh with the money. And so we kind of got to the point, really in like 2014, where I was like, hey guys, we really need to split the business up and refocus on Drupal commerce if we want it to succeed and platform to succeed. Like, they need to be separate concerns. But wasn't really able to make that case strong enough until like the end of 2015. Or rather, I guess I made the case really strong at the end of 2014. We tried through 2015 to split the business, sell the Commerce Guys brand to somebody, but nobody wanted it in the incarnation it was in. So we split it up, and I bought the Drupal commerce business out to refocus the Commerce Guys company around just Drupal commerce. And Platform.sh has gone on to do well. So, which is good, because I had to give them most of my equity back to buy the assets I bought. So we did a little exchange there. But I still own some, and I want them to do very well so that I can get a Tesla in a couple of years on what remains. So the Commerce Guys story, we started with Drupal 7, creating Drupal commerce. We got up to about 50,000 sites there, and then we began porting Drupal commerce to Drupal 8 really in 2014. It took a couple of years because we first started with some standalone PHP libraries, then built the modules, and then had the full release last year at DrupalCon Dublin. The first beta release, full release was this year for DrupalCon Vienna. And we still have a distributed team with guys in Serbia, Budapest, Tel Aviv, and then myself and 2 other guys here in the US. And that's kind of what we all do. But I can talk about any of that since we're kind of intimate here. If anybody has any questions or interruptions, feel free. And probably if you've been around Drupal, probably know some of this stuff already anyways. So thinking about Drupal commerce and how we've always tried to sell it as Commerce Guys was really like as a module package. We talk about it as a set of modules you add to a Drupal site to power an online store. We talk about the usage stats, which actually are kind of a vanity metric. I mean, Drupal's like whole usage statistics paradigm is somewhat flawed. But if we reduce the total number, I still say there's tens of thousands of stores, probably around 50K, that use Drupal commerce for direct consumer brands, digital commerce, events, donations, nonprofits, yada, yada, yada. Some of the biggest ones don't even have a storefront. So like Eurostar uses commerce as like the sales engine, but they have a custom front end. And the Royal Mail Group uses it for postage sales, but has a custom front end and all that kind of stuff. Or most recently, we had a case study out of Shanghai, where a Chinese fast food chain runs like $1.5 billion dollars in transactions through these Drupal commerce powered backends, but there is no storefront. So, that's kind of the varying use cases that we have. And as far as Drupal Commerce 2.x is concerned, we're still, already kind of in that growth phase that we had with Commerce 1.x, but it's still just around 1,500 sites, and that again is probably largely weighted toward developer sites at this point, whereas the Drupal 7 sites are largely weighted toward production because nobody's spinning up new D7 sites generally with commerce. But if we just stopped there and just thought about Drupal commerce as a module package, we're really missing most of the picture of what Drupal commerce is. And I honestly think it's kind of a failure of Commerce Guys marketing in years past that the community as a whole hasn't got this message more strongly and then known how to take this message into their markets. And again, Commerce Guys also was always kind of schizophrenic in like, are we helping other teams succeed, or are we trying to take the same business away from them? Are we trying to partner with ProMet on the American Library Association, or do we actually just want that project ourselves? ProMet be damned. Like, what exactly are we doing? And so there's just kind of been that confusion. Again, part of this is why we needed to split and refocus the company. There were 3 different offices with 3 different business leaders who weren't really coordinating their message. So what have we been missing? The first thing, of course, is that Drupal commerce is not just a module project. It's a collection of hundreds of modules. We maintain dozens of them, but that means there's still hundreds more that we don't maintain. And we have a very active community of people that manage these modules with us, that do new payment gateway integrations, new features, recurring billing, licensing, all that kind of stuff that makes up the whole of the Drupal Commerce module ecosystem. And usually the questions in our sessions are like, well, do you do this? Oh, there's a module for that. What about this feature? Well, there's a module for that. I'm happy to answer those questions, but just know that there's probably a module for that, and we can short circuit that. But also, Drupal Commerce is really a sales channel for independent software vendors. And we call them our technology partners. But as far as they're concerned, these people specifically on the slide even, and I guess I forgot MailChimp's logo and Locker's logo, unfortunately. Even though I do have their pins, if anybody would like to take some enamel pins. These companies look at Drupal in the same way they look at Magento, look at Shopify, look at BigCommerce, WooCommerce, probably not VirtueMart, but like all these other e-commerce ecosystems. Every one of these companies wants to be on every one of our Drupal sites. And the best way they know how to reach Drupal users is through Commerce Guys and through the Drupal Association, who I actively funnel them to, so that you can see Amazon Pay sponsoring at DrupalCon Vienna, and Authorize.net and PayPal have been at the US DrupalCons for a while. Square came to Baltimore with me. Avalara's been at Baltimore, New Orleans, and will join with us again for Nashville. And so these companies are seeing value in, oh wait, there's tens of thousands of merchants, and we want them all to use our payment gateway, our tax calculation service, our point of sale system, whatever else it is. And so part of like our role as Commerce Guys is to help them understand what the Drupal community is not, so that they don't think that I have an email address for every Drupal Commerce store out there, because that's just not how Drupal works, which really is like different from every other environment they work in. But it's also very developer heavy. So whenever we're doing our outreach to the community, we're doing it developer to developer, which again is unique. They don't actually have a great way in these other communities to reach out to the developer community. So it's just helping them understand what to make of the Drupal community and the Drupal events that we put on, so they know how to come in and actually do effective sales. And we've had some lemons. Maybe I won't name them since I'm being filmed. But people that came in thinking, oh, I'm going to put a module up, and because Commerce Kickstarter is this really popular distribution, if I just get my module in that distribution, I'm going to get 100 new merchants over the next year. And when they got 0, they were royally pissed off and asked for their money back and all that kind of stuff. And again, that was just part of the sales and marketing challenge that we had even in outreach to technology partners in the past. We're trying to fix that again. But Drupal Commerce is also more than technology. It is a collaboration of dozens of agencies. And I'm sure that, we've worked with ProMed on commerce projects. I'm not sure who else we would have worked with on project. Has Accelerant done Drupal Commerce projects? I'm not sure if I'd...
I know you've talked with Hunter and Piyush.
Okay, yeah. And so, that's what makes Drupal Commerce even attractive from the outside, is the fact that it's not just Commerce Guys going around talking about Drupal Commerce. It's actually agencies like 1x Internet and Adapt and Acromedia and Actualis and all of our partners promoting it to their prospects, but also talking about it at Drupal events and non-Drupal events even. We were at IRCE this year with Acromedia. It was the first time Drupal Commerce was ever represented at IRCE, so it was fantastic to finally be in this huge room with, this is the Internet Retailer Convention and Expo, so 15,000 merchants and technology vendors and so on coming to this giant convention center in Chicago. And Drupal Commerce, despite being a much larger platform than many of the platforms at that show, had never been represented, which is just stupid. I don't know why we never did that, but Commerce Guys solely focused its marketing on years past in Drupal-specific events. So we were at every DrupalCon and at dozens of Drupal camps, but never at IRCE or eTail or Shop.org or whatever else, the events that you would expect us to be at. And again, part of the challenge there is that we are governed by the Drupal trademark, intentionally so. I did that from my experience developing UberCart and then not being able to take the name with me when I left the company I was at when I developed it. So I chose the name Drupal Commerce to avoid starting this Commerce Guys thing and then getting venture capitalists involved and being shut out of my project again. Only now that I own the business do I wish that, maybe I wish I'd taken a different approach. But it's worked out well, because having that generic name lets other people feel free to jump in and promote it. So Acquia is still going to talk about Drupal Commerce because Acquia is about Drupal, and their tens of millions of dollars marketing budget can be put to some good use here in promoting Drupal as a commerce platform. Now I just have to convince them to talk less about Magento and more about Drupal native solutions. But it's all of these people, they funded development. So I think of the groups that are listed here, Well, I don't think MD Systems has actually paid us money, but they have contributed significant time. But the other 4 that are on the slide have actually funded module development because they brought a project in. So like Adapt.as, they got this amazing client. It's interflora.dk, one of the largest flower delivery sites in Europe. And they funded us for a month to work on the commerce shipping suite. So now we have multiple package support, split shipping, the full end-to-end shipment tracking and fulfillment support and all that kind of stuff, thanks to their project and us having the expertise to help them kind of do that faster and meet their deadline. And we also gave them a good deal because it's just contributed module dev. So it kind of, we've created these ways to collaborate with agencies that make sense from a business standpoint, which also was lacking perhaps from Commerce Guy's strategy in years past, which is, if we're going to work with other agencies, we can't be trying to ask an agency for $200 an hour to go and hack on one of our own contributed modules, because not only would they not do that, they would just pay their own person to do that. Like, you have to have margin to have a business, and if we're asking for more than their billable rate, well, then they're not going to sponsor our modules. So we've found ways to work that with these companies and others over the last year. Yeah. Yeah, these companies have all been DA. We did work with Acromedia on some D7 projects, and we do still have clients that fund Drupal 7 module dev. So our largest merchant client in Europe funds a lot of Drupal Commerce core development and commerce discount work for Drupal 7. And I think a few others are still rocking that. Any other questions? So we have the core modules themselves, the module ecosystem. We have all of the integrated technology partners. We have agencies who collaborate with us to build it. And like, if we then zoom back out and look at it from a big picture standpoint, like, all this put together equals an ecosystem that's worth over $1.5 billion in annual transactions across all of our users. And I think that number is probably low, because I'm reverse engineering these numbers from reports that we get from our payment gateway partners. So if PayPal says, hey, we processed this many dollars in transactions this quarter, I can reverse engineer the numbers, look at their usage as a percentage of our total user base, and say, oh, well, we're at least $1.5 billion. But I know that site that just went live in China, and I misspoke earlier, 1.5 is this number, they're at $1 billion in transactions from that one company alone, all running through Drupal Commerce sites as their point of sale system for hundreds of franchises, franchise locations. So like, in the grand scheme of things, like, that's maybe not huge. Magento touts 100 billion plus as their like total market size or total transaction volume. But for a company that has far less than 1.5% the resources of Magento over its lifetime, it's actually pretty impressive that together we've been able to get to this point. And so this is a number, for whatever reason, we've never really talked about gross transaction volumes. We've always just talked about the total number of installs or downloads, which is a total vanity metric, because every time you rebuild a site with Composer, you get a download. But like, this number actually speaks to everybody, because if we can go to the next pitch, so I had an opportunity to pitch a local, we'll just call him a vehicle salesperson, and say, hey, like, what you're trying to do, like, we have the knowledge, we have the expertise in the platform that can support that. There's no reason you should be concerned that we can't help you move. And we'll just say some expensive motorcycles, through the internet, using our software. And a lot of times when people do come to Drupal Commerce, they think, well, it's just an open source project. There's no commercial backing. It's not going to scale. And we've literally had people come to us at a point when they've already made the decision to re-platform. So I'll talk about Fortune 500 that's been on Drupal for years, using Drupal Commerce for all of their various sites. And they came to us at the point they'd already made the decision to switch to Drupal 8 and Magento 2. Probably thanks in small part to the Acquia marketing around that integration they're trying to promote. But like, what drove the business decision was their feeling that, oh, well, this just can't scale for us. And so I get on the phone with them and I say, okay, well, cool. Like, what have you tried so far? Because like, I have sites that do a lot more business than you're doing there. Have you considered changing your, your transaction isolation level, so tech speak, but like, just a configuration in your database server. If you change that one thing, I promise you'll get 2x the performance. They did it. Their performance issues went away, but they'd already made the decision to re-platform because nobody was there communicating with them what kind of scale you can reach and what the broad scale of Drupal Commerce as a platform was. So again, that's kind of a breakdown or a failure in marketing and selling Drupal Commerce as a viable e-commerce platform. And I wish I could say that they were the only ones that I've talked to like that. I've had at least 3 clients over the last year and a half since I bought the business that have re-platformed from Drupal Commerce for scalability reasons. And fortunately, we've had some success in convincing others to say, like, hey, let us do some performance profiling with you first. We'll do this optimization. We know we can hit these levels. And so, we're about 50-50 on who leaves and who stays. But this is the message that we need to take out to the broader, ecosystem. More. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I talked to a dev team recently, and again, Acquia is not unfriendly to Drupal Commerce. They put me in touch with one of their agency partners, who's working with a major national brand for outdoor equipment, and they were really bummed about Drupal Commerce scalability because they installed the product comparison module. And as a Drupal developer, if you're not thinking about scale from the get-go and don't know what about Drupal causes performance breakdowns, you can really put these problem modules out there that then one of our end users grabs thinking, oh, it's just going to be fine, and it completely hoses their site. And so that this product comparison module was adding a form to every cell in the product catalog. So if you look at a product catalog page, there might be 50 products there. And so it was adding a form there to add this to my compare cart or whatever. When in reality, you could have just used JavaScript and done it all client side, never touched the server at all. So then what happens in Drupal is if every form that you have fills up this table called cache form. And their cache form table went from 0 to 100 gigabytes, just crazy stuff like that. And so they think, well, Drupal Commerce can't scale. And I think, man, somebody really hosed you with kind of a crap module. I'm sorry. There's no reason this needed to have a form and store data in the database. It didn't need an entity, that's for sure. And so, part of it is just making sure people know they can have these conversations with us. And so they're not just this odd duck that chose an piece of open source software that can't scale and can't perform. And so, part of that is this presentation, making sure that you guys at least know that we have more to offer. So, who's actively pitched Drupal Commerce? Has anybody in here actually pitched it, or I know your companies have pitched it, but in our pitches, we often would talk about flexibility. I think for a while the tagline for Commerce Guys or Drupal Commerce was truly flexible e-commerce. We also pitch it as this is kind of like analyst driven, the merger of content and commerce and community to make your 3C strategy. I think Acquia was promoting that for some years. Gartner's released white papers on the combination of digital commerce and content. So you kind of have those threads that make their way into the sales conversation. Have you actually won any Drupal Commerce projects or just pitched it? Yeah? What was the reason they chose Drupal Commerce over another e-commerce platform in your experience? They're already on Drupal. Yeah, that's honestly my closest experience too. At least in the last year and a half, I don't believe we've won a competitive bid. We've won Drupal users, which is great. We're doing just fine on Drupal users, but that doesn't expand market share or grow a business. And for a digital agency that's trying to win, market share from their local competitors. I mean, there's Gorilla Group in Chicago that's selling a Blue Million Magento sites and Hybris sites. So if you're trying to pitch Drupal against them, you need to know something about how to compete. And what I found, and we lost a pitch against Magento because we sold flexibility, right? But going to them with flexibility was a huge mistake because there's no inherent value in flexibility. If you're talking to a business owner, they really don't care how flexible you are. They really care if you actually can solve their problems and stay online during Black Friday and give their marketing team some way to actually track sales growth and marketing performance. And so in our case, we showed up to a pitch. It was a pretty major international nonprofit headquartered in Seattle. We go out there. We had a great pitch. They took us to a soccer game. We'd spent 2 weeks building a demo that literally was an exact feature for feature prototype of what they told us they wanted. But they chose Magento, who offered a 2x budget, right? So a 7-figure budget to our 6-figure budget. And they specifically said, well, it basically gives them rails. It gives them a pattern to follow. There's security in knowing that people have used this software to do these things before and seen this performance as a result. And so when we came in and said, look, it's so flexible, we can do exactly what you want. I just spent 2 weeks and built this crazy demo that's showing you your custom product catalog and fundraising campaigns, and it's multilingual, internationalization, or multi-currency, it's fully internationalized, yada, yada, yada. Like, to them, they thought it was neat that it was so flexible and that one person could prototype that so fast. But that just wasn't their concern. And so our key value proposition to people, I think, has been meaningless or valueless to the business decision maker at the very least. And I think as developers, we value flexibility because we want to learn one tool and then use it in a variety of different instances. And that's part of the appeal of Drupal, is that you can learn one tool and use it for a content management website, use it for an e-commerce website, use it for a membership website, and so on. But in the e-commerce space, I believe that there's no inherent value to flexibility. And while we shouldn't hide the fact that we are really endlessly flexible, endlessly pluggable, probably more faster to get to market, to prototype new features, et cetera, I don't think that should be our tagline or what we lead with. And just to summarize that bottom point there, I mean, unlimited potential is great if you have expertise and know how to take advantage of unlimited potential. But if you're a merchant who's hiring you because they don't have an e-commerce director in-house and they don't have a CTO that's going to guide this project, like, they don't care about flexibility. They really just care about the results, and that's the value that you're bringing to them with Drupal Commerce. So that's lessons learned in trying to communicate about Drupal and Drupal Commerce. I'm happy to receive some pushback here, because I do think that people still talk about Drupal in terms of flexibility, in terms of single API to learn, single set of skills to master. But I just can't believe that generally speaking, like, larger growing agencies in our community are really talking about flexibility first.
And again, you're right. If you're selling to the dev team, then that has value. But if you're selling to the VP of marketing, it terrifies him, because he's thinking now, well, what's the dev team going to do with this system if they can do anything they want?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm actually finding myself telling my revenue team, you need to pull back on fully customizable.
Mm-hmm.
You need to actually start setting boundaries. It's like exactly what you said.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's how Magento, I think, grew so fast. Like, it's a behemoth. You get like way too much out of the box if you're just trying to build a small site or trying to do digital or whatever. But like they say, it's not about the flexibility. It's just about just get it and use it and get a template, and boom, you have a store. Don't try to customize it, because that's when things start to break down. Don't try to make it really scale without having $1 billion for your hardware. But like they didn't pitch flexibility at the least, to start. And I feel like they're kind of in like a new iteration of their business. So we'll talk about like what they're communicating about themselves. But just to take a step back from just one particular vendor, at IRCE, like, we went around, looked at how the various e-commerce platforms are presenting themselves. For the sake of this slide, I'm not talking about Demandware, Hybris, or these other major large tools, because I think we have won bids against Demandware and against Hybris, and we have had we've participated in Demandware projects where the customer is ultimately really unsatisfied and spent a lot more money than they were promised they would be spending. But I think that people that choose those technologies are doing so for other reasons, probably than the people who are comparing against Drupal Commerce and Shopify, WooCommerce, BigCommerce, Magento. This sort of like one level lower tier of e-commerce platforms. And I'd say Magento is trying to break up into the next tier. Even if you look at their website, like, you won't see really open source highlighted. You don't even see pricing anymore, I don't think, for enterprise licenses. They're moving more toward a percentage of revenue share model. So they're trying to break out of our class, but I'm going to keep them here for the sake of the fact that, like, we do pitch against them a lot. We've pitched alongside of Magento. So I think in the last year, I've participated in 3 bids that would have been Drupal Commerce as a front end for Magento. And that is how Acquia pitches it. It's always Drupal Commerce not Drupal Commerce, but Drupal 8 for customer experience, Magento for your transaction engine. They usually use like a subdomain model, so you're just bouncing from I think Wilson.com to shop.wilson.com once you add a product to your cart. I don't think it's that great, but that's what we've done it. I'm not opposed to it. I've in the last year written a WordPress plugin, my first one ever. We've written a Shopify plugin, and we've done some BigCommerce API research. Just so, like, while we are like the Drupal Commerce company and advocates, like there's still a place for these. And I think we talked in the last session about land and expand as a sales strategy. That is also Acquia's long game. Maybe you're not ready to re-platform from Magento, and I'll talk about why you might not be ready to do so if you were the merchant. But if you can get Drupal in there as the front end, well, eventually, once they decide to consolidate their technology, that could be an opportunity for DrupalCommerce to take over the transaction side of things as well. So I know that's a big part of Acquia's strategy, is to get in there with Drupal in some fashion, and then grow the percentage of their marketing budget that goes toward Drupal. And I think their biggest success story is probably NBC Universal, where it started small, but now, I mean, Drupal powers the Olympics and, half of NBC's web properties or whatever else they do. I know it's a ton. So thinking about like how these tools and platforms present themselves, Shopify's is probably the simplest, which is just kind of like, hey, like we're an e-commerce software as a service, small to large, like come to us and we'll take care of you. We're gonna help you grow, and you're gonna get a template. It's gonna be easy to make it look good, and go for it. And I find it probably to be the most compelling of the four up here, because in a real sense, like if you're going to be satisfied as a business with Shopify, you should use Shopify, because they start at like $50 a month for like the meaningful tier. I think they may have a cheaper tier, but you kind of have to pay up a tier to get to like different kinds of discounts, and even more to get shipping integrations and that kind of stuff. But at most, you're talking, short of going to their enterprise tier, which is like $1,000 a month, you're talking maybe $200 a month. And the kind of company that's going to be satisfied with a service that costs $200 a month is not going to be happy paying us 6 figures for a Drupal Commerce website. Now, they need to know the trade-off. Like, you're trading flexibility for a paradigm, but for many businesses, a paradigm is all they need. And I've got a friend who was on Shark Tank for his company called Beard Brand, beardbrand.com. They're like one of the largest beard care companies that kind of hit that wave. We talked about what Shopify was doing for him, and he had some real challenges with it, specifically around content marketing, because their CMS capabilities are crap. They're as good as Magento or BigCommerce, which is to say not at all. And so he was having to run WordPress on a subdomain alongside of his Shopify store. They also weren't good for international, so he had to have one domain for his US, one domain for UK, even though he opened a London office. So he had these like small frustrations, but at the end of the day, like for him, these were small frustrations, where if he can get basically most of what he needs for $2,000 a month, those two Shopify Plus sites, like it doesn't make sense for him to go spend $100,000 to pay somebody else to reproduce what he has and then like throw content into the mix in one platform. So I find Shopify to be pretty compelling, and we actually actively push people that direction. And has anybody watched Dries' keynote from DrupalCon Vienna by any chance?
What's part of it?
Part of it? Did you see the part where he talks about where does Drupal fit?
Right.
That's probably the most important part of that keynote. If you have a chance to go back and look at his slides, maybe he maybe blogged about that particular part of his presentation.
Digital experience.
Yeah. And what he basically said is that as far as he's concerned, both as the project lead and as the CTO/co-CEO interim of Acquia, is basically leaving behind the people who are going to be satisfied paying Squarespace $15 a month. And that's smart. Again, I just had up a Squarespace site that I built for a local client, because we're doing a property development. All I needed was a brochure page with a contact form. I said, cool, give me your credit card, like we'll have this up tomorrow. And it's a template. We dropped in our own photography and it was done. Didn't have to think about it, don't have to maintain it. Great. Same with Shopify. Like if you're coming to me and saying, hey, like, can you do this, and this, and POS, and sales tax, and VAT, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, cool, like, why don't you just go use Shopify, because your $1,000 budget is not going to go very far, not only with me, not even with the cheapest outsourcer I could find for you. So like, just go use, some kind of software as a service. And that's, maybe unfortunate if we're thinking about like the open web and open source software and some of our roots and philosophical beliefs. But from a business standpoint, because we're all trying to build businesses and not just build an open source community, we do have to eat and pay our employees, and my wife likes to have a vehicle and a home. Like we're not focusing on serving those people. And one last anecdote and I'll move on. I'm pretty sure it's the Drupal Association store was running on Shopify for a while. And this was maybe in 2015, 2014. We got this idea in through the marketing team where someone's like, hey, like somebody needs to go and talk to somebody at the DA and tell them we'll rebuild their store for free. If they just use Drupal Commerce, that'd be a big win for them, for Drupal, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, guys, like you're talking about like it's going to cost us $60,000 to rebuild what they get from Shopify for $50 a month. No thanks. Like, I'm not going to build them a point of sale terminal that they can take to every conference and suddenly have fully integrated to their e-commerce site for free and have to maintain it. This is a horrible idea. No offense, but we're not doing it. They need to stay on Shopify or whichever one it was they were using. I'm pretty sure it was Shopify. That's them. WooCommerce, I actually think, is making a mistake. So they literally talk about flexibility as their primary advantage. We're the most customizable. And I had a friend, a local company, that switched from BigCommerce to WooCommerce recently. Their BigCommerce site looked like crap. It performed like crap. It wasn't mobile responsive. It wasn't integrated to their ERP in the way they needed it to be. They switched to WooCommerce. Now it's all those same things and even slower because whoever built it said, let's go to the WordPress plugin buffet and add everything to it, And you got scroll jacking, which is like my most hated thing about website, where you like scroll the mouse wheel and then it like pages down. No, I know how a browser is supposed to work. Anyways, it's really easy to do that kind of crap with a WordPress site. And I think we've avoided that somewhat in Drupal by not having the whole like module browser in the back end of Drupal, so people don't necessarily hit that plugin buffet and overload their plates. But still a problem with WooCommerce. But they're huge, right? There's a reason WordPress paid like $40 million to buy WooCommerce. One, they have a different relationship to the GPL than we do, where they kind of sell the subscriptions or sell plugins for support fees. But that's how WordPress works, so fine. Like, they had some legit revenue behind them. But they also have like, I think they now advertise like 600,000 sites or something like that. So anybody that puts like an ebook up on their blog, is a WooCommerce site, and that's part of their stats. So fair enough. But they do talk about being the most customizable. BigCommerce is probably the only one in this class that's really hitting omni-channel, which I thought was pretty interesting. So you can use your BigCommerce site to also sell through the Amazon marketplace, to also sell through eBay, also sell through et cetera, which is great because those are real requests that we get very often. And I keep having to say, I don't have a connector for that. I don't have a quick way to put you on onto eBay yet. I'm sorry. I can build it if you're interested in funding it. But if it's a question of build versus buy, they're going to go buy every time, because to build that's going to cost at least 20 to 30K. If you look at how complicated the APIs are, the two-way data synchronization, and all that kind of stuff. And then last but not least is Magento, and they're really funny. So they do like have this like we kind of do it all vibe. Like I think that they kind of stuck the feather in their cap really early on when Red Hat called them like the hands down winners of open source e-commerce forever. But of course they got acquired by eBay. That didn't work out. They spun out again. Now they're independent again, still putting lots and lots of cash into the project. They lost their CTO. They lost their lead devs who went to WooCommerce, which is now a really solid e-commerce platform for B2B. And I probably should have put them on here because they were at IRCE as well. But Magento, like at the top of their website right now, is B2B commerce simplified or something like that, which is crazy to me because Magento's never been a B2B platform, but Oro spun out or split out, probably a bit hostile, but split out, staked their claim in B2B commerce, and it's probably eaten their lunch, which is now like why Magento's reacting against that. And I think it's crazy, but I'm sure they'll figure it out and do it and make Magento even bigger and even slower and even harder to deploy. And I some inside knowledge here. So because we built Platform.sh, Platform.sh is the Magento Enterprise Cloud. So if you go get Enterprise Cloud Edition, it's running on Platform.sh, which was kind of had its roots in hosting our enterprise Drupal commerce sites, then became this big product on its own right. And we got a personal email from them thanking us for Damien, my former partner and the CTO of Platform, for all of the work that he was doing to make Magento 2 install in less than an hour on the best hardware we could throw at it. So that's where they still are. But again, it's easy to poo-poo them as developers and as open source enthusiasts, but like they also are far and away the most successful. Well, Shopify is probably the richest, but of the open source, total platforms, it's not SaaS. Like they're certainly the most successful. I think Shopify is like going crazy. I look at their stock every now and then. I should have bought it when they first went public, but I think they're like heading towards some number of billions in dollars in revenue or something. So that's how like these other people are presenting themselves, and they're also like they're everywhere. They're all big on alliances. So everywhere I went at IRCE, there was a snowboard deck in a booth that was from the Shopify booth, and then you go to the Shopify booth, and it's about as big as this room, and it's a ski lodge with like a fireplace and a pro shop, and they had snow coming from the ceiling and everything, like just this like huge presence. And so they're really communicating. Well, one, they're communicating we have way too much money to blow on marketing. But two, like everybody there wanted to have a Shopify deck in their booth to show like, yes, we integrate with Shopify. Magento was there as well. They actually had like this 2-story booth where you could go upstairs into this like fishbowl like conference room. So if you had a private meeting with them, you'd be like up above the conference floor, like having their private meeting in the boardroom. Really phenomenal. They didn't have quite the like we own this floor kind of presence as Shopify did. But this is all fun to just go and see like, okay, what are they doing? How are they building it? Can we do anything at all similar within the Drupal space to promote Drupal commerce as this level of e-commerce platform? Obviously, it's going to take money, but it'd be futile for us to spend the money if we don't have the message right. So we're not at the point where I'm going to just go dump $100,000 at IRCE next year, but maybe in 2 years it would make sense. So when we talk about communicating the value of Drupal commerce, what can we do now to begin winning more commerce deals, using that to invest in the platform, and then create a message that makes Drupal commerce bigger than any one Drupal company and pushes it out against these competitors who have the advantage of all being closely held projects. I mean, Drupal commerce again is unique in that like we are a collaboration of agencies. It's led by Commerce Guys, sure, but there's no way that we could do everything that Drupal commerce is in the same way that WooCommerce can, because they have a budget of tens of millions of dollars to hire a blue million people to hack on all their plugins and support their merchants and all that. Or in the way that Magento can because they're open source and name only, or that Shopify can, or BigCommerce can because they're SaaS and they have a clear revenue model. So to win deals, one thing that we can do is we can acknowledge our strengths. We do lead any of these other platforms in digital commerce. We do lead them in memberships and event sites and nonprofit sites. And those sites may not be as lucrative as a large direct-to-consumer or retail site, but they're still interesting in their own right and still are projects with large value, like large dollar amounts behind them. In the last session, we were asked to think of our top 5 projects over the last year and then average out the value of those projects that we delivered. And 2 of our most lucrative projects that had 6-figure budgets were digital commerce sites. Like they were just subscription management sites. But the real funding comes in like back-end integrations, ERP integrations, subscription management platform integrations, marketing tools to help people, track the life cycle of a sale, because a SaaS company often, if they're enterprise first and then trying to go direct to consumer, has a great sales model for winning new bids and opportunities. But we found that they don't have a way to translate that sort of trackability and end-to-end analytics in the, oh, great. Yeah, that's remind me later, Java. They don't have the way to do that in their e-commerce, and so we for one of our clients, we actually built them the direct-to-consumer sales channel for their SaaS subscriptions, and their salespeople didn't want to point people to it because their salespeople couldn't identify a sale as theirs. So of course, if you're taking money out of their pocket, they're not going to promote the fact that you can go sign up on the website, and so like a lot of the budget goes toward these more like marketing and sales and analysis features, which in my opinion, like that's a great way to demonstrate value to the clients. Like, hey, like we helped you understand where your sales are coming from, and you're going to be able to move this number now. Everybody's happy to pay for more sales in the future. So we can talk about how we do lead these solutions in these ways. I think none of the other platforms are going to be good for like large file download sites or private content access sites, those sorts of membership sites. From the earliest days, I think Drupal has really had a niche there. When I think about my first ever like freelance projects in like 06, 07, it was like Warner Brothers Records wanted to do fan clubs for all their artists using UberCard at the time. Another guy was doing private training courses, and so he was using Drupal, and I had some rules set up to give people access to what they needed access for. All that kind of stuff. Like it is a key strength of Drupal, especially as that intersects with our content management and content marketing capabilities. But even if we are better in certain ways, and I also do think that you get more out of Drupal in terms of creating custom user experiences, but that does require you to have a user experience expert in-house or access to that expertise. But even if we are better in those ways, people still can't use us if they're less productive with us than they are with other platforms. So even if Magento is subpar as a digital commerce sales platform, if people can get a site up faster and demonstrate productivity to the client faster, and then maybe beat their head against how to sell ebooks through it for a little while longer, they'll still choose Magento because they'll choose what makes them more productive and shows the client more value faster. And so we have to kind of be upfront, I think, about our productivity curve, and we actually need to communicate to clients why this is in their best interest to defer what is the appearance of productivity or the appearance of value. Because you may be more productive up front with other platforms, but over time, your productivity, I think, will shrink if you're trying to bend it in ways it wasn't intended to be used. And so that's a classic problem with Magento. If you try to customize it or change the way certain capabilities work, you then have breakdowns in other parts of the site that you weren't anticipating. And I, unfortunately, don't have direct first-hand experience to give you stories here, but I do have former employees and a partner, Mike O'Connor, who left to go to a Magento agency or came from Magento agencies that said this was always their problem, is that their productivity decreased over time because they just didn't have what Drupal has in terms of configuration management, DevOps, just code organization that facilitated a true plugin architecture that didn't break other parts of the site when you altered them, that kind of stuff. So
late 80s on, right? So you've got this defined way that you're supposed to run, but it doesn't fit your business, so you customize the software. And then you have another update that comes out that blows away all of your customizations, so you can't deploy. So now you have to spend all of your innovation budget fixing, recustomizing things that you customized in the past. And so you see this okay, you get this capability, but you see this decline, and you never catch up. Over time.
I've even seen that with a local opportunity. I didn't win it, unfortunately, but they had that issue where they adopted Sitecore, trying to bang against that forever, and just are doing enough with their full budget because they're nonprofits. So they don't have just a way to really grow their budget. They're just doing enough to keep it going.
I see very large companies with almost unlimited budgets. They get to a point where it's $1 million to upgrade the customizations they've done, so they can move into a still supported version of the software.
So I'll kind of just make this appeal. If anybody has a Drupal Commerce client who had that story, I'd be more than happy to promote the heck out of your case study if you wanted to publish one on Drupal.org and let me promote that for you. Because I think we need to figure out how to communicate that consistently and effectively to the market, that with Drupal, you may have a slower start because you're going to build your content data model. You're going to make sure you have a good DevOps workflow and get all these kind of fundamental things in place. You're going to have your configuration management all set up. But then as you're going, you can make rapid changes and deploy really quickly with our enterprise clients. Within 1 to 2 week sprints, we're developing, testing, and deploying whole new features at a speed that they could not have imagined before. And we migrated some of them to platform.sh, and they fired their internal sysadmins and got just wholly outsourced all of their architecture to platforms. That was another thing that improved for them. And I think that Drupal is a bit on the forefront of platforms as a service offering that kind of capability, whether it's Platform or Pantheon or Acquia or whomever. You do see value that grows over time, basically in terms of productivity and ability to iterate and continuously deploy new features. And I don't think it's on this slide. It's not on this slide, but with Drupal 9 introducing backwards compatibility for Drupal sites, fine, you never have to re-platform again. Drupal 6 to Drupal 7, Drupal 7 to Drupal 8, those were re-platformings, especially Drupal 7 and Drupal 8. If you're a big Drupal 7 e-commerce customer looking at Drupal 8, as soon as you see what it's going to take, you start to also evaluate Magento 2 and BigCommerce and whatever else, because it is re-platforming, unfortunately. But we'll never have to face that again, and we've been contributing in a big way to make sure that this happens, and we've been maintaining Drupal Commerce according to the new rules that we have, basically, for making sure that you're not using deprecated APIs and you're developing in a backwards compatible fashion and so on. And then finally, we're taking, really by necessity, a more curated what I call like paradigmatic or selective approach to building out the technology partner program. So I only have 9 folks that I work with right now as like legit technology partners. We used to have more. We had dozens. They're still on DrupalCommerce.org, so I haven't had the time yet to update our websites. But we just couldn't bring value to all of them. And most of them don't bring value to our users. I'd much rather just have fewer partners, even if they aren't directly paying us. I'd much rather have fewer partners that are known to work, and then deliver a paradigm to a prospect. And then to say, hey, like we can integrate you with any of 5 different sales tax calculation services and any of 6 different email marketing tools. Like, I'd rather go to them and say, cool, you're in the US, you're going to use Avalara for sales tax, and you do email marketing, awesome, we're going to integrate you with MailChimp. Done. Like, why even bother focusing on Bronto and MailUp and MailJet and every other tool under the sun? Just give them the paradigm. Obviously, we aren't cutting anybody off because Drupal's still Drupal, but like we only have so many resources and really so much attention to grab. So we're going to just be more selective and curated in our approach there. That's actually part of why I have the MailChimp buttons here, so feel free to take some MailChimp pins, because we do want to make sure that people know that you can do end-to-end e-commerce, like direct marketing and analytics through MailChimp. So talking with them about making sure people in the Drupal community know how that works, but I'm happy to talk about that more afterwards as well. We're almost out of time here for the session. So finally, like, what is Commerce Guys doing to build a competitive ecosystem and present that to the market, and how can you get involved? The first thing I already mentioned is to formalize a technology partner program and fill in the gaps. We do have some gaps in marketing. That's why we're actively courting and working with MailChimp to figure that out. And other companies as well. Carts Guru is an interesting cart abandonment service that we've talked with about integrating. Security. So we do recommend Locker for API key management, but what about fraud prevention, identity theft, that kind of stuff? I have a local opportunity that I'm looking at for that. In fulfillment, we really don't have any order management systems that we identify as direct integrated partners. Some kind of open to that, but most of them are really more just come to us. Like, we're not really interested in partnering, like, because they tend to be bigger and have all their money they need. Even MailChimp, like they don't have a sales team. They don't do any sales. They do marketing, but they don't have anybody out there trying to sell MailChimp because it sells itself. And we're coming to them and saying, hey, like, we want to be like on this table that you've created for Magento and Shopify and BigCommerce. Like, put Drupal Commerce up there as well. So we're doing that. And then we're also trying to formalize like our agency partnerships. Again, Commerce Guys tried to do this in the past with this delivery partner program that, for lack of attention and also for lack of leads, was really half-baked. Similar to the productivity curve. I think that this is going to be slow. For the people that we're engaging with right now, I'm not driving business to them. I may help them win business, and then I may make their delivery a bit more efficient or a bit more effective, which, yeah, they're paying a consultant or a subcontractor, but hopefully getting more margin out of that than spending 3x the time trying to figure out some of the hard things themselves. But ideally, as we grow and engage the market, I mean, I want that to flip-flop, right, or at least balance out. So the value that we're bringing to agencies that we work with isn't just, well, we'll help you deliver your project better and maybe get some of the stuff that you need into core, but also, hey, like, we're also generating so much business we can't even deliver, hope to deliver follow-up on all these leads. Here, why don't you go talk to this person and this person and this person? Or they're in Chicago, well, you need to go talk to ProMat. Or they're in Atlanta, go talk to MediaCurrent or whomever else. Like, however that story evolves. This is definitely early stages, and we've only kind of like piloted that with a handful of the agencies that we worked with, and it's mostly just been like staff augmentation for now. So if they got a project, they didn't have D8 experience in-house, or they didn't have commerce expertise, they'd add us to the project and we would help them out. But I want to see that change, and I want to see that become something that's actually scalable. I can't scale putting my guys on somebody else's project for a day a week, because I don't want to keep growing my team endlessly. That's not the kind of company we're trying to build. We really are trying to operate more like the software vendor behind Drupal Commerce, and we just won't scale if we're trying to be the experts. We want to create more experts, really. And then finally, obviously a big need right now to even just like have a seat at the table at IRC is to have a website that actually communicates the value of Drupal Commerce, the value of the ecosystem, who we all are, and why people should pay attention to us instead of just assuming it's just a hobby or bespoke open source project. So these are the things that we're involved in right now. Kind of because Commerce Guys did spin out from platform a year and a half ago, we had $0 in the bank and really have had to spend the last year and a half making the money to build up our cash reserves. But we're at the point now where we do have our cash reserves in the bank, and we're beginning to actually like dedicate to marketing budget instead of just do it as we can. So we're working with a design firm that's actually based in Belgrade right now, because that's where one of my core team members and partners is. And so we're working with them on Drupal commerce themes that we can just pay them to develop, and then we give away for free. But we're also going to engage them on DrupalCommerce.org, CommerceGuys.com, and begin to just make a bit of a better, play for ourselves in the marketplace. Acromedia has been a big help in that as well, and we look, more than happy to talk to anybody who's interested in, any of these initiatives to help us build them out, or even just understand how you can talk about them. If you needed a one-pager on all of our integrated technology partners, could easily provide that to you, so you know how to go and pitch sales tax calculation to your clients. For example, we work with Cellar Door Media a lot, the company behind Locker, which is that API key management product. And they were approaching a franchise business that had a couple of hundred locations in basically every state in the union. And you just can't create tax rules that are going to capture all of that, especially in states like Florida, California, Washington, Texas, Colorado, where like every mailing address almost has unique local taxes, county taxes, state taxes you have to accommodate. And so we said, cool, here's how to make the pitch for Avalara. They went in and did it, and it was a really compelling pitch. And now they've shown their client, hey, I actually know what I'm talking about when it comes to e-commerce. So that's how we're trying to bring value to folks in the community. If there's a way that we could bring value to you that I didn't mention, more than happy to have that conversation while I'm here. We do try to distribute a lot of this info through the Commerce Guys newsletter. But again, because it's been marketing as you have time, I've been a bit infrequent in managing the newsletter. But again, looking at improving this through the new year with legit resources and a game plan to begin to up our game. So that's all from me. If there's any questions, I'm happy to field them. All right.
One that's a little off topic.
Sure, yeah.
The Chinese company that put together that POS system, phenomenal. I've never seen it. I don't recall, was that D8 or D7?
Combination. I'm pretty the life of the project. They've had microservices basically that were running Drupal 7 and some that are on Drupal 8. Okay. I think it might still be more Drupal 7 than Drupal 8, but I could find out.
So it is it's multiple apps kind of
right.
Different
right.
Of it, right? Okay.
Yeah. So you have one Drupal commerce site that's basically the product information management system that then feeds data into all these custom point of sale apps that were just JavaScript based that fetch data via REST API from the Drupal site. But then another Drupal site that handles transactions, and then another one that handles the full content marketing flow and all that kind of stuff. So they're creating microservices that could iterate and develop on one without breaking something else. And it's probably that's probably the scale at which microservices like that makes sense. For most Drupal commerce sites, that would be a bit overkill. But
Is Drupal commerce ready for Drupal 8?
Yeah, we had our full 2.0 release at DrupalCon Vienna. We've released a half dozen large Drupal commerce sites over the last year. I think our first release was at DrupalCon Dublin, Sport Obermeyer. Blue Spark was the main agency on that, and we did tech leadership and senior development for them. And you can see that case study on Drupal.org.
How many sites Drupal commerce covers?
That was earlier in the presentation. It's tens of thousands. The usage stats on Drupal do include some development environments and that kind of stuff, but at least 50,000. Drupal.org says 65, but if you discount that, it's around 50K.
50K Drupal commerce sites.
That's my guess. Hard to say. I mean, we're unique in the grand scheme of things. Everybody else requires an email address. We don't. We require a command line, and that's it. So we're working to get around that, or at least begin to reach out to merchants directly by developing our own software as a service, which will be a reporting and analytics dashboard that you can embed in the back of Drupal Commerce. But that's not done yet. It's very alpha still.
We're coming with the dollars that you were putting up earlier. Is that you got that mostly from the clients themselves or from the merchants?
Yeah, the question is for the $1.5 billion in annual transactions. That number is coming primarily from our payment gateway partners, who we know their share as a percentage of our user base, and we know the transaction volume that they have just from Drupal Commerce users. So by reverse engineering that, we can. Yeah, I would have access to it, yeah. And that's part of why it's important too for us to have these payment gateway modules where we basically, they all have some way to identify the application. So you have like an application code in there. Sometimes it's Commerce Guys because the biz dev guy didn't know to make it Drupal Commerce and whatever else. So sorry that might be in your code base somewhere. But generally we try to say it's Drupal Commerce, and then that identifies it to them, and they're able to report on transaction volume. Which is pretty cool. We don't have access to like actual merchant stats. It's just the aggregate stat. But yeah.
We actually talked about Drupal Commerce originally was like it's the highly customizable system. What's the new pitch line instead of being the full customizable?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure yet. Yeah. I mean that still has a certain appeal because it is kind of what makes us unique.
Yeah.
We really are like build to suit, tailor-made, e-commerce applications. But I'm just not sure. I almost feel like Drupal Commerce will be more successful the more that agencies kind of own a vertical and create a solution that uses Drupal Commerce and pitch that solution to the vertical. So for example, and I mean, radical transparency, right, from the last session, I would love to really hit B2B, and rather B2B plus B2C. So people that have this channel conflict, right? And use Drupal Commerce to somehow help solve channel conflict issues, or to help people with channel marketing. I think there are channel marketing solutions out there. They're all underdeveloped, and they all start at like 50 grand a year. So take a vertical like that. Blue Spark's probably the best example where they took the hospitality industry and created Roomify with the Drupal Rooms project and Drupal Commerce. And so that's a solution using Drupal Commerce. I also like private content. I like digital commerce. I think we have like something really unique to offer those verticals. Thus far, Commerce Guys has really just been saying we engineer simpler solutions to the hardest parts of selling online. And so, it would look at like solving complexity, not necessarily flexibility. Those are kind of one and the same, but we've been pitching it that way. That if you have hard problems, cool, like lay them on us. Like we can solve this. We've already seen it, or we can solve it. But that's been us more as a professional services company than us as a technology or software vendor. But kind of like it. Toying with the concept of lean commerce, reaching into like lean manufacturing and lean startup philosophies and methodologies to think about, e-commerce that handles complexity by breaking it down into solvable problems and then iterating your way toward greater and greater, capability. So that's a thought. But it's the kernel of a thought, and if you want to see what the branding and design for that looks like, come up to the laptop and I'll get your feedback as my crowdsourced design feedback. But I think thinking in those directions will be what brings people success. And I know Acromedia already thinks in those directions for like enterprise. Enterprise is not really a vertical, but at least as a market segment, like you can talk about the things that the enterprise is looking for, like omnichannel. Like, we got from POS to e-commerce to marketplace, we got it all. If you can do that, then you can talk about Drupal Commerce as the perfect omnichannel solution or something like that. But, I think it could be. I don't think it is right now. Any other questions?
How much are the most common Drupal Commerce add-ons, like discount, that kind of stuff, have you successfully converted for 2.0?
Yeah. So the question is, how many of our major contributor modules are now ready for Drupal 8? And I'd say the answer is complicated because about 40 to 50 of them are now part of Commerce Core. Address books, card on files, or cards on file. Address book, card on file, promotions, discount coupons, all in Core now, along with a variety of checkout improvements like checkout or like login or continuous guest, the checkout wizard, a 2-page or 2-column layout with like your little coupon block. Like basically, like we looked at Shopify's checkout experience and said, cool, like we need to do this at least. to start. So Commerce 2.x is definitely much more capable and opinionated out of the box. And that's kind of across the board the approach that we're taking here. Like I said, with technology partners to being curated and a bit more deliberate, we did the same thing with Commerce itself. So ideally, you have to do less for each site that you build, use fewer modules, and be more productive, because we do want people to be more productive with this than other tools. Shipping is a big one that has a beta. I don't think we have the full release out yet. We've just finished a sprint funded by Torchbox, an agency in the UK, to address recurring billing and license management. So those are out now and usable. What's that? Yeah, for fulfillment, I mean, the shipping module has shipments and shipment management and everything baked into it. But for specific carrier-rated like service or carrier-rated APIs like UPS integration, USPS, FedEx, etc., those are still in progress. But Andy Giles is here, and he maintains 2 or 3 of those. So you could find the status update from him. And then all of our major payment partners have all been ported as well. Most recently, we did the Braintree full release. Authorize.net is funding Accept.js integration right now, that kind of stuff. Yeah, one last question, then we'll break, because I know there's a keynote panel, I think, going on right now.
Okay, for if a customer is in the Magento, what would be a single point to convince him to come to WooCommerce?
I'm not sure that there is one. Maybe more than anything, like they're hurting for like actual content management, actual digital experience, because you don't have any CMS capability whatsoever within Magento. So that would be the place to start. What's limiting or hindering your sales and marketing? Maybe it's your e-commerce application, but maybe they found a way to work around it in the meantime. You never know. So it'd be those things, or it could just be performance and infrastructure costs. But I'd have to think like it would take multiple years of heavy infrastructure to replace the cost of a replatform. So hard to say. But it's definitely like a conversation to have with your prospects or clients. Like, what's holding you back? I do have a Magento client in Greenville who uses Magento and then WordPress for content, and then he also has an old Uber cart site for some private sale platform he built, and then he also has a custom Ruby on Rails application. So like, he basically just went for everything under the sun. Probably with each successive consultancy that helped him, they just introduced a new technology. And so for him, like, consolidation is a big thing, and you can't consolidate some of those things into Magento in the same way you could in the Drupal. So it really is going to vary, client by client, lead by lead. If anybody's interested, I do have a Drupal Commerce back channel newsletter or mailing list at this point that I'm building, where I'm just trying to connect directly to sales and marketing and biz dev folks to begin keeping people in the loop on Drupal Commerce, the roadmap, the ecosystem, news, announcements, et cetera, et cetera. So if you want to take a card or just give me your email address, I'll add you on there. It's part of that, like, how can we actually engage agency partners and actually make people money and not just cost them money by selling them consulting services. Not that we would shy away from that, but that mailing list will be the start of that. And I can't imagine really moving there until at least like January, February next year. But we can at least begin some education in the meantime and talk about roadmap and sales roadmap, that kind of stuff. So thanks for your time. Appreciate it.